Well, let's. This was not planned.
Right. Absolutely.
I happen to carry this in my wallet at all times because I believe so strongly in the incredibly articulate sentiment of this. Teddy Roosevelt said, "It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled. Credit belongs to the man who really was in the arena, his face marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs to come short and short again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. It is the man who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasm and knows the great devotion, who spends himself on a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of great achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and cruel souls who know neither victory nor defeat."
Born in 1959 in France to Hungarian refugees, Frank Darabont moved to Los Angeles when he was 5 years old. He graduated from Hollywood High in 1977, but he didn't attend college, instead opting to go to work in the industry, working his way up from his first job as a PA on a low-budget Linda Blair movie called Hell Night. Darabont would spend the next 6 years doing odd jobs in art departments until he landed his first major gig as a writer on 1987's Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Though many think of Darabont as a director, he's a very prolific writer, often brought in by studios to fix troubled scripts. His first film as a director was a short, Stephen King's Woman in the Room, and it was one of Stephen King's so-called $1 babies. Named this because King would sell the film rights to art students for $1. This transaction led to a handshake deal to acquire the rights to Rita Hayworth's Shawshank Redemption, Darabont's first feature. Darabont is one of only a handful of directors to have both of their first two movies nominated for the Best Picture Academy Award. And it's not hard to see why, considering those movies were 1994's Shawshank Redemption and 1999's The Green Mile. Despite finding great success adapting Stephen King's work for the big screen, he took a chance in 2001 when he made The Majestic, an original film written by a relative unknown named Michael Sloan, and starring relative unknown actors like Laurie Holden. The Majestic was one of Jim Carrey's first serious performances, and a combination of the subject matter and odd casting saw The Majestic fail to make even half of its budget back at the box office. Returning to more familiar territory when he decided to get back into the director's chair, Darabont adapted yet another Stephen King project, 2007's The Mist. Fighting tooth and nail for the dark ending he wanted for the film, Darabont managed to get the movie made for a measly $18 million by using one small set and his cast of regular actors, who were willing to work cheap for a chance to work with Darabont, or work at all. The Mist minted money, and Darabont hasn't directed a film since, though he has gotten back behind the camera a few times, famously to direct the pilot of a television program based on a Robert Kirkman comic book called The Walking Dead. He also created a TNT gangster series called Mob City, 4 episodes of which he also directed. Darabont has had a long, illustrious career full of clashes with studios over casting and money, uncredited fixes to problem scripts, and projects that he abandoned for creative reasons, which I think is to his credit. Darabont makes the movies and TV shows he'd like to see, and based on the popularity of most of his projects, audiences tend to agree.
Welcome back to Film Hooligans. I'm your host, Jon Dunning, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Altz.
Hey everybody, thanks for rejoining us.
We are still stuck inside, so why not spend our time wisely by watching a bunch of films? And who better to talk about than, I almost said France's own. Like, yeah, he was born in France. He doesn't fucking live there.
They don't claim him. He pronounces it Darabont because France doesn't claim him. When he left France, he got to pronounce the T. Yeah, man, let's talk about Frank Darabont.
Darabont. Darabont.
Darabont.
Frank Darabont. Let's jump into it, but before we get too far into this episode, Jason, I want to introduce my special guest. I will go first tonight. I don't know if I usually go first or not, but tonight I am, because I'm drinking a Fremont Space Danger. This thing is a IPA. It is a 7%er from Seattle, Washington. It has a dinosaur and a spaceship on it, something that you might see, characters from a Frank Darabont movie watching. More on that later. Jason, do you have a special guest?
I think I've probably enjoyed this beer on the cast before. It's one of my favorite from the Founders Barrel Age series from Founders in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is called Mas Agave. It is it's a lime goes style in tequila barrels. So you get you get that tequila taste a little bit, but like it being a ghost style, it's got that saltiness and the lime. It's actually very, very pleasant. It's a 10%er, and I'm running low on it. The grocery store I normally go to was selling it for like half price, so I stocked way up. But the more I'm like, I bought a bunch. The more I drink, and the more I drink, the less I have. The less I have, the worse I feel. So drink Mas Agave with every meal.
L'chaim.
Prost. Let's do the podcast.
This is
as they say in podcasting.
as they do in those real shows. Yes, so let's talk a little bit, as we do, about the man himself. You know, Frank Darabont was born in France to Hungarian refugees fleeing from the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. So he is of 4 sisters and 5 brothers. Moved to L.A. when he was 5 years old, so I think via Chicago, too. I think there was a pit stop there. He kind of lived the American dream. You know, he graduated high school from Hollywood High in 1977. He said, you know what? I've had enough of this school thing, which he very famously has said and gone on record to say that college is not for everyone, and in this case, he was right.
Mm-hmm. Even film school is not necessarily for everybody, you know?
Yeah. Because, you know, I don't think his first, like, inspiration to be a filmmaker was watching George Lucas, of all people, but THX 1138.
Ironically, a student film.
Yeah, exactly. That was his film school. He's very influenced by Frank Capra films, like It's a Wonderful Life. He's very into that Jimmy Stewart, you know, / George Bailey type roles and characters. And that just kind of genre in general.
That's crazy to me. Like, Capra made they called it Capricorn back in the day. He just made corny shit. It's a Wonderful Life is not on every Christmas because it's a good movie. It's on every Christmas because somebody forgot to renew the copyright on it, and then every station could show it for free. So like, hey, here's 2 free hours of television, and then everyone's like, oh, this is on every year. Like, the fact that he's like, oh yeah, Frank Capra, that's my shit. That's just so crazy to me, you know?
It feels wholesome for him, right?
Kind of. When you see the ending of The Mist, you're like, yeah, that's a guy who really loves Jimmy Stewart hogging people. Oh, we got the bankman who not to everybody's loan.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny too, because like his characters, you know, especially like in The Majestic and stuff like that. I think that's his most Capra-esque film, his most Capricorn film.
Could you imagine if they made The Majestic back in the day with Jimmy Stewart? Because I super can.
Yeah, totally. And that's I think an ongoing feels with Darabont is, even, you know, no matter if he is going for that kind of more cheesy kind of family tone like in The Majestic, or if he's, you know, going for a darker tone, they all feel like movies that could have been, or maybe even should have been, in a different era, in an era before.
Exactly. The Majestic isn't like It's a Wonderful Life. It's more like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Mm-hmm. Type of a deal. It was a little, maybe you couldn't have made it at the time, certainly, because it was very critical of, you know, Hollywood blacklisting and stuff like that. So, I mean, clearly they weren't far enough away from it to be that blunt about it. Mm-hmm. You know, the Majestic, I think, is slept on. I think it's a very important movie. Maybe more important than it is good. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think you could have made it back then, but it feels, not just because it was set back then either. You know, it feels like it's of that era. I could see Jimmy Stewart playing that part for sure. Maybe the better of the two Jims.
Not maybe. It's probably my favorite Hollywood wank film for sure.
Yeah, back before that started being a thing every year.
Yeah.
It was nice before they're like, oh, we just tell Hollywood how great Hollywood is and we win Best Picture. All right.
This one's just like, Hollywood's going to, you know, call you a communist and throw your ass in jail. It's pretty bleak. So, you know, even the feel-good, you know, Capricorn esque film is pretty dour, like The Mist. And speaking of The Mist, he wanted to release The Mist as a black and white film. If you've ever if anyone out there has the Blu-ray, you'll know what we're talking about. Like, watch The Mist in black and white, and that complete The Mist is fantastic. Anyways, it's a great film. It's probably top 10 horror in my opinion of all time. But
it's tough to argue, especially if you top 10 within the oeuvre of just Stephen King adaptations, of which there are many, and as much as a lot of them are bad, for every golden years, there's The Stand, right? So The Mist is, that's, I don't know if it's top 10 horror for me, but man, The Mist is so good. And we're going to talk a lot about 11 movies because that's all he directed. So we're going to mention movies like The Mist a lot, but also I think it's not fair to not talk about his whole everything he's done, not just as a director, but also as a filmmaker and writer. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. So going back to it, his first film was a short, and also a Stephen King adaptation, the very first one that he did, Woman in the Room, and this was one of Stephen King's first dollar babies, which led to a handshake deal because he loved it so much. So he got to acquire the rights to Rita Hayworth's Shawshank Redemption, and you think about King adaptations at the time, that probably wasn't a big Stephen King just likes to get his stuff adapted, no matter what.
Well, in any medium, and the fact that he will give film students the right to make any of his stuff into a movie for $1 it's super cool. I think Stephen King is a very fine novelist, but personally, I think his shorts are better. Yes. Because I don't know, he will have a weird dream, and he's like, oh, that's an idea. He had a dream about a guy pouring change down a drain. He's like, I have a story about psychic assassins based on that. It's crazy the dots he connects. But I think his short stories are very good. And something like The Woman in the Room, which was a very kind of simple story. It's just a woman in a room and then her son kills her. Spoiler alert.
Right.
I think he really excels as a short writer. So not everything has to be The Stand where it's on television every night for a week.
It's hard to adapt his stuff because, well, especially in the, if you're talking circa 70s and 80s King, where he's got a nose full of candy.
Yeah.
He spends chapters on explaining, what Randall Flagg's buttons look like. And it's just Jesus Christ. So adapting.
Were you George R.R. Martin? Jesus.
He was R.R. Martin before he was cool. So the fact that Darabont not only picked the projects that he picked to adapt, which aren't his big ones, he didn't go after The Stand, he didn't go after The Shining or anything like that. He went after Shawshank Redemption, Woman in the Room, and
well, funny story about Shawshank Redemption. It's from a collection of short stories called Different Seasons, and 3 of those 4 short stories were adapted.
Yeah.
One called At Pupil that has, what's his name? Ross from Friends in it. Schwimmer. Yeah. And Ian McKellen, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He played the big bad
Pupil.
Nazi. Yeah.
There was Shawshank Redemption, and there was the Body, which became the River Phoenix movie, Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4th one is something called The Breathing Method, about a woman who is doing Lamaze, and then she's in a taxi cab crash and she gets decapitated, but her body's still, her neck is still breathing, and she has the kid.
That one freaked me out.
I'm not surprised no one's made that. That was kind of a stinker. It was a lot of lead up for just that moment.
Sure.
So I don't feel bad spoiling that story for you because I just saved you a half hour reading it. You're welcome. So but the other 3 in that collection, that's 75% still pretty good. Those were, if you haven't seen At Pupil, maybe just read it. The movie was okay, but the book was the section of the short story collection was really haunting.
Movie was great when it came out, but goddamn does it not date well. It doesn't hold up, but at the time it was pretty impactful. But Darabont just does, takes these adaptations. He's like one of us. Like, it's like if someone came and dropped us some money, because Darabont doesn't get a lot of money when he gets to make films or directs them. It's like we're doing it. It's almost shot from a fan point of view, because he just adapts it with so, like, Stanley Kubrick took The Shining and he made a Stanley Kubrick film. And to much of, Stephen King's dismay, where, Stephen King, the biggest the adaptation he didn't like the most was The Shining, which is arguably one of the best movies ever made, because the filmmaker made it his own. Kubrick who's a bigger ego than Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick. But Darabont's just like, no, I adapted these, I picked out these specific things because they spoke to me for a reason. The one caveat to that is the ending of The Mist, where he just felt so strongly about that. He called Stephen King. He's like, if I can't do this, then I just won't make the film, because I just feel so strongly about that. And King's just like, you know what? Shit, I wish I would have thought of this when I made this.
Well, now that's talking about the ending of The Mist is a spoiler, because now there's an ending. But you won't see it coming. Even if there's something coming, just watch The Mist if you haven't.
Yeah, like we don't like spoiling movies that like just came out like last year or something, because not everyone gets a chance, especially in this Corona apocalypse. It's understandable.
You've had 13 years,
right? But still, The Mist is one that I don't want to say much about, because it's so like the end.
Well, not a ton of people have heard of it either.
Right. Yeah. It bombed. It absolutely bombed. But that was another reason. Like, that was one of the things that Stephen King said. He's just like, I absolutely love this. Just know that this is going to really not only turn off half or more of the audience, but also it's going to affect you monetarily. And it absolutely did. He did not get, as I think his budget was cut in half by MGM, because he was so adamant about the ending. And to even keep the lights on, he shot at multiple endings, but obviously we got the one that he wanted theatrically. I think he was like, yeah, of course, I'm gonna mold this over and make a couple endings. But I mean, kudos to him, because he had a vision and he went for it, and just everyone be damned. And man, did it piss off people.
I like that The Mist is perhaps the best example of him having his troupe of actors. He has a lot of people that he uses over and over, and they're not necessarily well known, because apparently being in a Darabont project doesn't rocket you to stardom.
The opposite, almost, to some.
I don't know. You can work steadily if you just do his stuff, though. Like, ask Jeffrey DeMunn, who was in like all of his projects, So.
He just got like, maybe it was because he was aging or something. He just got more curmudgeonly. But by the time he was a very beloved character from the Walking Dead series in Dale, like people were begging for his head. Like, everyone was like lighting candles in the streets when they killed off Dale in the comic book. But they're like, God, he's just awful. Like, just kill him. And famously, he was the co-creator of The Walking Dead. He had this vision for it. They did. The long story short is they wouldn't give him any money, really, even though he ported over all these actors. They basically worked for peanuts just to work with him again, and then they just kind of kicked him out. And I can't help but like wonder how great, because he's such a great adapter. I'm
gonna argue with you.
Okay.
If you think he did a good job with season 1 of The Walking Dead.
He only directed the first episode, but
yeah, he directed the first episode, but like it was a short season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Season 1, it just went completely off the rails. Like, maybe I'm saying that because I like the comic book, but when they ended up at the CDC and all that junk, where the guy's like, I'm going to lock us inside and kill us all. I was like, this is so stupid. This isn't The Walking Dead. I was so mad. And they're like, don't worry, season 2, they're going to spend 13 episodes on 2 panels from the comic.
Right. The finale with the CDC felt very studio metally. It felt like, oh, the whole point of The Walking Dead is not to know how it started and for it to never end. That's the point of that's what sets it apart from other zombie IPs. And they're just like, well, we got to give them something, just show a little bit of something on the screen to kind of explain it for the audience. And, that's what we got. But Days Gone By, the very first episode is, as I think you could put that up with some of his movies, because it is shot like a film. It is so panel to panel, but not in a completely unoriginal way. He still put a Darabont stank on it. He let the whole thing unravel so slowly and so organically with Rick waking up in the hospital and the way it's shot, because even in the comic book, it kind of rushes through that a little bit. But he did such a great job.
Well, you know what I've noticed? When I read a comic book and there's no dialogue, I go through the panels faster. So I think it felt rushed in the comic book because there's nothing to read, so you just like blow right through it.
Sure.
You're like, blah, 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 he's in the hospital, don't open dead inside, or don't dead open inside.
Yeah.
And you just blow through that, and then when there's words, you slow down a little bit.
Because you got to read them. Yeah.
So I think, pacing something when there's no dialogue, it can be tough in film, So I think he did an excellent job with that episode specifically.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is pacing, and I think pacing is something that sets a Frank Darabont film from other filmmakers, because he will lock you in. He doesn't even have the street cred to do it, but he'll make you do it because everything's important. But there's no waste. It doesn't feel fat because there's no wasted filler in any of his films.
So the first thing we wanted to point out about Frank Darabont is just that he does a good job picking the projects he wants to adapt. He does a very good job writing them. He knows what's important and what can be cut. And he'll take a long, rambling Stephen King short story and make it pretty concise, That Green Mile, that was Stephen King's like, I'm going to send you a 100-page book every day of the year until you're dead. And they made a 2-hour movie out of it. So
3 hour. Oh, yeah.
Was it 3 hours?
It was 3 hours.
Okay, but it was like 9 books.
Yeah. It was the opposite of Uncut Gems. For some reason, I was rewatching the Green Mile, and I'm like, this is the polar opposite of that, because Uncut Gems was like maybe 90 minutes, and it felt like it was 4 days.
It felt like a week, yeah.
Yeah, and then like Green Mile
just kind of, it was really slow and like not a lot of action, mostly dialogue, and it kind of just flew by. You're right.
Yeah. Well, he is a master at making limited spaces or single locations feel huge. You will get to you'll get at every closet, every bathroom. Like, he uses everything to where it feels bigger than a Michael Mann, Chicago film. And you're just stuck in a grocery store in like The Mist, or in Shawshank. Shawshank feels like a city that these like rats are kind of going in and out of like a maze, and I think he does that so well. And old-timey kind of Hollywood thought process where he uses so many extras in each of those like kind of benchmark films, in Shawshank, Green Mile, and The Majestic, leaving off The Mist right now. There are these scenes where Jim Carrey's getting off the train, and it's just, there's a sea of people, and it's not CG, and it's not like a close shot where it's really like 20 people, but it looks like there's more. No, they're all like giant, wide, slow crane. There are humans there, like a ton of them. Or like the scene where Tim Robbins is playing the music for everyone, and it kind of it does that little like montage of all the prisoners just looking up. It's incredible. Like it's really, you have to have a pretty commanding presence to be able to set that up so meticulously, where so many things could go wrong, and he does it so well.
So we like to talk about things he does well. I don't think that he's that fantastic as cinematographer. I think when we talk about directors, sometimes we talk about people in terms of how they work as a cinematographer and how they work as a filmmaker. I think he does a good job getting films made. He does a good job picking the projects, writing the projects, directing the projects. But like as far as camera tricks and stuff like that, that's maybe not his strong suit per se.
No.
But I think he's above average, certainly. And the fact that his strength is as a writer, I think that's commendable, that he really plays to his strengths and picks his locations very well.
I think his DPs work harder than they do on other films because I don't think that's what toots his horn. What toots his horn is to be faithful to either what he's adapting or his own original writing, or his take on what he's adapting, and the performances bringing that to life. He lets, he got the legendary Roger Deakins to shoot Shawshank, and it looks gorgeous. It looks elevated as far as just like shot wise. It's elevated from the rest of his filmography for sure. It's just a perfect looking movie, perfectly. It's just one of those, 10s across the board. But then you get to, Green Mile and Majestic, where he started using David Tattersall, famously the DP for the Star Wars prequels. And they're kind of shot like Star Wars prequels. It's, you're getting odd zooms. There was
a lot that sucked about the Star Wars prequels, and how they looked, especially at the time, is not among the criticisms.
Yeah.
So, like, not everybody involved in those projects was cursed, right?
Right.
Not everyone had Jake Lloyd or Hayden Christensen's career afterward. Ewan McGregor still acts. Come on.
Ian McDermott still plays Ian McDermott.
So, like, it's what you're like, oh, he was the DP on the prequels. Yeah, well, the prequels looked fine. So, good. He got paid a lot of money, probably, so good for him.
Let me rephrase that. The prequel, any Star Wars film, if you're a DP on a Star Wars film or a DP on an MCU film, you're only doing 15% work. You're really just there to shoot the actors talking in rooms while the studio fills in the effects.
Yeah, it's a guy talking to a tennis ball on a stick. Exactly. When a camera at a green screen.
Yeah. So the only thing that they can really do with camera work is like weird zooms or crane shots.
There was some location stuff, though. There was some model work and like
Coruscant.
Not
about the prequels again still.
All that underwater stuff was 100% real.
Yeah.
Misa want to move on.
Yeah.
Like
it definitely felt different. By the time he got to The Mist, like I said, he had no money, so he used Ron Schmidt. That sounded like a huge dig to Ron Schmidt, but Ron Schmidt's credits are Beastmaster 2, Through the Portal of Time, Men of War, and Lord of Illusions, and Star Kid. So he got a budget cameraman.
What do you need for the Mist, though? Because The Mist is like, these people are arguing. Do a Dutch angle. You did it.
But that's the point of The Mist. The Mist isn't. It doesn't. I almost think that it. And I know it's not true, but in the back of my head, I'd like to think that this is true, and then it's not just a budget cut. I like to think that The Mist looks bad on purpose, so you focus on what the real monsters are. And it's, Mrs. Comstock or whatever from BioShock, the zealots and the divide, when shit goes down in society, it's your neighbor that you have to worry about more than the things in the Mist and stuff like that. So it's almost like forces you to pay more attention to what the movie's really about than just the fantastical creatures. And then you read The Dark Tower, it's like, no, these creatures are part of a big thing, and my thing goes to the wayside. But I like to think that, it looks like shit to hammer home creativity even more.
Well, and just shooting on in a claustrophobic set, it's a tiny grocery store. That's it. That was The Mist. So, using every square inch of the place, I think, it's good, man. He set that up the real way. I mean, we don't need to keep saying that we like The Mist. Everybody likes The Mist. Anyone interested enough in movies to watch this podcast has probably seen it or would like it. But that was just another example of him picking a good project, writing it up well, and doing the most with a limited budget, which is like, look, we got one camera and a really small grocery store, and that's the movie. And that worked.
So, well, he, just instead of just talking about the films themselves, why do you think it was that he picked the King projects he chose to adapt?
I think he liked them. I think,
but out of an ocean of King books, novels, shorts.
Okay. You're not saying why King, you're saying why those?
Correct. Yeah.
I think he picked ones that you could shoot for not a lot of money.
Really? Okay.
Some of them, like The Mist, for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can make The Mist cheap. That's just like Shawshank Redemption. Yeah, it's a big set. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of period costumes. They lost their security deposit when Brooks carved his name into the board in that hotel room. So, they had to get all the 1950s cars and stuff like that. Like, that was expensive. But, I mean, something like The Green Mile, that's a small set. Tom Hanks is probably half the budget of that movie.
Oh, for sure.
So, I think some of the Stephen King projects he picked, like Woman in the Room, that's a student film type of a project, right?
Correct.
Because there's a woman in a room. That's it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I think some of the projects he picked, he was fans and they resonated with him. I think when you read Stephen King, you get a certain feeling that something's off. And I think when people like David Lynch and Stephen King, who say they write from their dreams, dreams have a weird kind of twisted logic that when you wake up, you're like, why did I think that sentence, which was gibberish, meant something? So when you put those gibberish dream sentences on a screen, audiences are like, ooh, that's weird and I don't know why. Right. So I think the fact that sometimes you'll read Stephen King and you'll feel real weird because he's just making you feel like you just had a dream. I think when he picks the projects that make him feel like that, that's why he picks the projects he picks. / he wanted something from a 1950s prison in Maine.
Right, yeah.
Right, like his two most successful projects were that, so...
Yeah, Green Mile is like one of those outlier King films where it like takes place in Louisiana and not in Maine, which is, you can't adapt two King things that take place in Maine, I guess.
Everyone's like, he looked like a one-trick pony at that point, right?
King's the only person that thinks Maine is as interesting as it is. But
like the whole time he was also just writing scripts too. Yes. Like the same year he directed Shawshank Redemption, he wrote the script for the Mary Shelley Frankenstein adaptation, and he was nominated for a Saturn Award for Best Writer. Like he produced The Salton Sea and the year after The Majestic, and he was the EP on Collateral.
Yeah,
in between The Mist and The Majestic. Collateral being a movie we raved about when we did the episode about Michael Mann. So he was doing other stuff. He's so good at everything. Like he's like, I'm writing and producing, directing the whole time. So you look at his it's like, why did he take 5 years off between, Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile? Like, well, he didn't. He wrote an award-winning script and produced a movie and did other projects.
Yeah,
so
what did you do? Yeah.
Well, but yeah, the fact that he's so good at so many different things, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it was like right after The Majestic came out, he was doing an interview and they're just like, so what do you got next? And he's just like, I actually got some, so I owe some scripts to Castle Rock to write, he's just like, I'm not one of those that needs to jump right back into a director's chair. If that feels like it needs, if the material, I'm paraphrasing him, but if the material feels like it needs me in that way, then sure. But more likely than not, I'm just, there to write. And again, it's like between that and that kind of makes it more understandable to me why he and King are so simpatico, because King is more about his characters, the people, and everything else is kind of background noise. A Stephen King character and a Frank Darabont POV character are virtually the same. They're just normal, everyday people. You think of The Stand. Everyone is just living their normal life. They're every day, they're going to the grocery store, whatever, and then boom.
He doesn't write John McClane's, right?
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, I was at a party and I just happened to be a cop, and I just happened to have my gun on me. It's I was out in my yard and I found an alien spaceship, and I heard about the Tommyknockers. You know, it's like you said, it's just regular people where weird shit happens to them.
Yeah. Like, if you look at his early track record, he was writing more horror, and he would come back to that with The Mist and with Walking Dead, but I think that, he kind of started with horror.
I mean, yeah, but it was sort of like the stuff he wanted to see. Like, he made the Fly sequel, which wasn't great, but he did a remake of The Blob that was very good.
Very good, yeah.
He wrote Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which was a movie.
I think that's the best sequel as far as that series
goes.
It
was better than the second one for sure, yeah.
yeah. And I think that he's just like got nothing but time and patience, because after he acquired just think about that. Just like, you finally get to meet like your hero in Stephen King. You get his blessing on adapting something, and then you get handed a passion project that other people are seeking. I think Rob Reiner was trying to buy the rights from him, and he's just like, no, he took like, what was it, like 5 to 10 years off or something in between before he even attempted Shawshank, to go work on other things, to hone his craft more, because he wants to make sure he has the chops to do the project justice that he's doing. And that's like kind of unheard of in today's Hollywood. Everyone is just like, you hand me whatever you hand me, I'm going to go make. Like, and some are better than others. Like Taika Waititi, you hand him whatever and it usually turns to gold. Cause he's got stuff that he could go do studio things, and then he could go do his own things. But like Darabont's just like, he's just picking specific projects. You're not going to see a Frank Darabont, James Bond. It's just not going to happen. If it's not a passion project for him, he's not going to do it.
Well, that said, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't talk about all the times that Darabont's been fired.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff is like, well, he wouldn't make somebody else's movie, but yeah, he gets fired from other people's shit a lot because he can't play ball. Right. So people bring Darabont into like, yeah, could you do this? He's got 11 directorial credits, including shorts and student films, because like he gets fired a lot. He got fired from the Godzilla reboot. He got fired from that Huntsman, the Snow White movie.
Mm-hmm.
He got fired. There's some other stuff.
Most famously from The Walking Dead.
Sure. And I mean but there's like movie projects he didn't get fired, but like he just butted heads. He's like, this is my vision for it. And they're like, no. And he's like, all right. So he's never given a lot of money because he doesn't play nice with the studio. If they don't meddle and they let him make the thing he wants, he'll make it. And it's usually really good. But he won't just make crap that he doesn't like.
Right.
Even if he makes mistakes, it's the way he wanted to make the stuff. And you got to kind of admire that. Like, his career would be better if he played ball, but he can do so many things. If they're like, you'll never work as a director in this town again, he's like, good, I don't care. I'll just write. Like, I will come in and save the Godzilla script.
Exactly. Yeah.
I will come in and write. He's written on so many weird movies that you wouldn't expect, like Minority Report and Saving Private Ryan, but like shit like Eraser. He wrote that Mary Shelley Frankenstein script, and then he wrote on Mission Impossible 3, and then he's written so many scripts that never got made, and he just doesn't care. He's just like, I was paid $100,000 for this, and it took me 3 weeks, and I just I put a deck on.
And he would never want to sit in the director's chair for those either.
Yeah, not necessarily. So I think it's good that he doesn't play ball. The people that do are useful, but the people that don't just make the stuff they want to make. And I think he's so multifaceted that he will never starve. So I think that gives him the balls to be like, you know what? I don't want to do this your way.
Yeah.
I had a vision for whatever Chris Hemsworth Snow White movie, and you didn't like what I wanted to do. So I'm just like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I can just leave. And I don't know. I admire that. I don't know if he's a pain in the ass to work with per se, but I think he's got strong opinions and sticking to his guns. You gotta admire that.
To certain people, I think he's a pain in the ass. I think his actors love him. Like I said before, they're willing to work with pennies. There was a great interview with Sam Witwer, who is in the Mist. He's like the main army kid, like the hometown kid. He's also now like a famous voice actor. He does like
he did Walking Dead too.
He did. So yeah, this is like one of the big reasons why it didn't work out for Frank Darabont on The Walking Dead. Like he wanted to Sam Witwer's character in The Walking Dead. He's the zombie in the tank when Rick goes to Atlanta and has to like find his way in there, and he sits down real quick, he looks over, and then that zombie's there, and he shoots, and then he goes like deaf for a minute. Darabont wanted to do this huge backstory of just like an entire episode of that zombie, of him like
how he ended up in the tank.
Like the society breaking down and how he got bit, and then he wound up there, and then he had a grenade, and then at the last second he decides not to, and then he just like dies, and then cue Rick coming in, and it was this big production that was gonna probably cost a lot more, but he's like, no, I want to do this. Like this part is really speaking to me. And they're like, no, but this isn't, that was when they cared about trying to adapt everything so closely.
I know. And so they brought in a guy who did like 3 seasons of Smallville and was on Battlestar Galactica. It's like, would you like to be a zombie for 30 seconds? He's like, oh, we know we hired you for like 2 full days at the SAG rate, but
yeah, exactly. That head turn was real dramatic. Though.
Yeah. Yeah,
but that's it. That's he just gives too much of a shit for Hollywood to stomach him.
But I think he's a dog with a bone on certain stuff. He really, really wanted that dumb thing with that zombie, and they're like, no. And so I don't know. He wasted Sam Witwer's time, kind of, right? Like,
yeah.
To an extent. I mean, he's done fine. He's been on Supergirl since.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big deal. So I personally like the fact that he can do enough that he can say no. Because some people can't afford to ever say no. And you're like, why would you do this piece of shit? Well, I needed $75,000 more than I needed to say, no, I don't agree with you creatively.
Right. Need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the results. Put his I'm saying like his big 5, and that's like his 5 director, his director credits, full length features up against other 5s.
Shawshank, Green Mile, Majestic, The Mist, Mob City.
Oh, okay, 4. Sorry, 4. Only 4. Yeah. Put the maybe Walking Dead, the first episode or whatever. But if we're not counting that because it's a TV show, so put those 4 against other people's films. It's just like, how could you argue with the results? Like Shawshank is by so many, and not by just like basic ass like film nerds, like by so many. It's a near perfect film. It's up there. Green Mile has some problems, but it's up there too as one of the greats. Like he just makes classics. You put him up against like a Tarantino or Bong Joon-ho or something, then I don't know, pound for pound, but
like he hasn't done enough original writing. He's just very good at adaptation.
Yeah.
And I like the most original thing he ever did was like write a sequel, So it's not, he never really came up with a wholly original idea, but like Hollywood doesn't like wholly original ideas per se.
Right.
I was just thinking about how I heard this interview with Hank Azaria where he was talking about, he's like, I like The Simpsons. I'm rich from The Simpsons or whatever. Because everybody negotiated as like a group. And they're like, yeah, we all make $1 million an episode or something stupid like that. But he's like, I really wanted to be in film. And, I made Mystery Alaska and Mystery Men, and those both tanked, and then I wasn't in movies anymore after that. And that's crazy because those were both good But like at the time, everyone's like, we want another Fast and the Furious movie. We don't want to go see Mystery Men, you know? So as much as everyone's like, oh, these people should be doing original shit, should they? Somebody, if they are going to constantly crank out reboots, remakes, and sequels, I would prefer some of them were good.
Yeah.
I don't like that the fact that like it's so hard to get an audience on the same page that they will just remake, reboot, and sequel everything.
Right.
That is good just because they're like, we can definitely get more money out of people, because nothing's guaranteed. Good movies just lose money sometimes. I would have preferred if they were going to reboot RoboCop that it had been good.
Yeah.
And I think if you have someone like Frank Darabont and you're like, we are going to do a sequel to something people like, I think he would be more likely to do a good job with the script. He might get fired. He might walk off, you know, for creative differences. But I think you have a good chance of having a decent sequel or reboot or whatever, because somebody who understands how to do that kind of thing is involved. I'm not saying that it's great that there's such a dearth of originality in Hollywood where like good original projects end up in development hell and it's just sequels for days. I get that it's a business, but at the same time, somebody competent should take on some number of these projects.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. He's not a great cinematographer, but he is a great filmmaker, and those are his strengths, and I think he knows that.
It's hard to see where he fits in going forward, if he wants to even fit in, as far as a new project goes.
I will tell you what I would like him to do. He has the rights to 2 Stephen King projects, both of which I would like to see him do. One is called The Monkey, but the other one is called The Long Walk, which was a Bachman book.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to see The Long Walk.
The monkey from the Skeleton Crew?
Yeah.
Short? Yeah, okay.
Now, the Bachman books were books that he like wrote in college, and he's really embarrassed about the one about a school shooting called Rage.
Yeah.
Which was really just a guy pulls a gun on his teacher and then holds everyone in the classroom hostage. That's such a Darabont project. It's insane, right? But like,
yeah.
Stephen King's like, every time there's a school shooting, I feel like a piece of garbage for writing Rage when I was like 22. It's like, all right, man.
Yeah.
I get that, but like, calm down. It's not your. Nobody got that idea from reading a Bachman book that people only found later, because like the Bachman books were like republished in like '96 or whatever.
Yeah.
When everyone's like, oh yeah, we like Stephen King now. So Rage was about a school shooting. They made The Running Man and used like none of it. Did you know that the Bachman book, Stephen King wrote the original story that was adapted into the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, The Running Man? Yeah, they used like nothing. The Running Man was like a contest where you had to play hide and seek in America and everyone was trying to kill you for a bounty.
Huh.
And you had to mail in videotapes. You had to like videotape yourself and mail it in, you know, so you didn't just stay in the same place. And they could like try to track you from where you taped yourself or whatever.
Kind of Escape from LA-ish.
They kept nothing except the name, basically, right? But I mean, The Running Man was, I mean, great movie. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, come on, Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Then there was something called Roadwork about just a guy who like they're going to bulldoze his house to build an overpass, and he just like holds up in there with guns. But the 4th Bachman book from that collection is called The Long Walk, and it's basically these 18-year-old kids sign up for this contest where you walk at 4 miles an hour, and if you slow down 3 times or if you stop, they just shoot you in the face, and then you walk until only one person's alive. And I want to see that movie so bad.
Damn,
and
yeah.
he owns the rights to it. So if that's what he's going to do next, I would like to see them. I would like to see him make The Long Walk. Did you read that collection at all?
No, the only one that I read, of course, was Regulators, the Bachman book.
Yeah.
And goddamn, would I love to see Darabont Regulators / Desperation adaptation, or even The Dark Tower. Like, obviously, this man
just reboot The Dark Tower. It's fine.
Just do it.
Just do it this year. We don't care. It's like, we just had, no, you know what? No, that didn't count. That never happened. Let's just.
God, when I was watching The Mist for the very first time, and it opens on him painting Roland in the field of roses, I was just like, oh, come on, just go all the way. I could take more than the tip. Like, I want to see him.
But Darabont for $5 million could make a gunslinger.
Yes,
where he chases Flag or whatever. He ends up at the saloon. He runs up into the mountains. They have the confrontation at the fire pit, and then
slow mutants. Yeah,
and then he ends up in the crossing the bridge with Jake. Like, make that movie for $5 million. That would be better than the thing they made for like $70 million.
Hand it off later. Like, once it gets too big, because it does, it gets pretty spiraling. Fine, hand it off later, but. Tell me he couldn't, like you said, the gunslinger, even Drawing of the Three, where it's like mostly on a beach and, it's kind of heisty.
Drawing of the Three was my favorite book in that whole series.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
We could do a whole podcast on just the Dark Tower,
yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see that, because he is, like I said, he directs he's like one of us. He knows what people care about, what people want to see, what people want to hear, the emotion that's important. He gets that material so much better than like so many other people, Stanley Kubrick included. He just does it, and that's why King's just like, anything you want, just take it and do it. It's just, but on the other side, it's just like his filmmaking style is a bit antiquated, in my opinion, where it's a lot slower. It goes at a nice pace to really kind of let everything sink in. In this new A24 era, that's the future of indie filmmaking, and it's been great. You've been getting like The Lighthouse and Parasite and all these like great original films. But I don't know if there is room for an old timey Hollywood adapter.
People talking in rooms.
Yeah. Unless you're PTA, and even PTA is not really pumping out films.
It's tough to do a very small set.
Yeah.
That's why I talked about Rage, because I think you probably wouldn't make that movie post Columbine, but like, I think that's his oeuvre, sort of a deal. You have like just a classroom, and you have 20 people that you get to know really well,
right,
over the course of the movie, and it's claustrophobic, and you're shooting at weird angles to make the room look bigger or the room look smaller, and it's just a lot of dialogue. I think that would be something he did well.
Yeah.
That would never make it, but he would do a good job. That's why I think I'd like to see him do the Long Walk. That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Even a piece of shit like Under the Dome has Darabont written all over it. Like, I think he could do something like that. There's just specific things, even if they're not just like the greatest Stephen King hits, that just stick out, and he is able to elevate them in a way that others can't. And King is just, if you could get King right on film, you could get almost anything right. Seems like he's been around for forever, but he's only 61, so I mean, he's still in prime like filmmaker years. Like, if he wants to, he has another 3, 4, even 5 left in him, just as far as like actual clock goes. But again, if he never makes another film, I'll still call this career one of the greats for sure.
I think he does so many different things well that, like, a lot of his contribution to cinema is sort of invisible. If you don't like read down in the credits, like, oh, he was a script doctor that was paid $250,000 but got no credit, or, oh, I didn't know he wrote that, because I don't look at who writes Frankenstein, because we all know who wrote Frankenstein.
Right.
So I think some of his contributions are sort of harder to find unless you really dig down. And I think he's probably fine with that. So I think it's like he gave us 4 really fantastic movies, but also, He's given us a lot of other stuff because he fixed a script, or he wrote a script, or he just threw some money at being an EP on something. And I really think he gets movies that I like made, and I appreciate that.
And that's just the credited ones. He's even said there's a ton he's just a script doctor and has gone, uncredited for. But he just has that kind of clout. It's just like, if you're the go-to from these big filmmakers, just be like, hey, I ripped myself in the corner, or hey, this and this feels like it could be a little different or whatever, and you're the guy that calls. That's something too. One more thing I did want to point out before we kind of close this out, is he had a great way of finding diamonds in the rough. In The Green Mile, that was one of Michael Clarke Duncan's first roles, and that was one of the most captivating and emotionally raw performances, and against type. Like, I think that he really kind of gets off on that, where he sees this giant monstrosity of a man, Michael Clarke Duncan, and he made him very childlike in that role. Or Jim Carrey, this was before The Majestic, was before like Eternal Sunshine, before Jim Carrey started really taking that turn. I think it was after Truman Show, but whatever. He likes actors and actresses stepping out of their roles, their usual like molds rather, and challenging them that way. And he found like Laurie Holden. Like, Laurie Holden had like a couple credits on X-Files, and she went up against huge name actresses to be the love interest in The Majestic, on the other side of Jim Carrey, and she nailed it. He said it took him 7 months to hand her that role because of pressure from the studio being like, hey, these people have some real chops, what are you doing? And he's like, you know what? No, this is my film. I feel like this is the best chemistry, on-screen chemistry we're getting. I'm going with her. And, and then he kind of kept her. He kept her through The Mist. He kept her through The Walking Dead. So it's just kind of amazing that he has that type of loyalty, and that his performers have loyalty towards him as well. So that is our episode on Frank Darabont. What is your favorite Frank Darabont film? There isn't a whole lot to choose from. What would be the dream adaptation film that you would all want to see? We kind of told you ours. Like I said, now it's just like a wet dream to see him do Desperation and The Regulators. That would just be, I could die happy like seeing that. That would be incredible. But yeah, tell us if you want to listen to this in podcast form only. You could do so on any of the major sites like Spotify, iTunes. Leave us apples and oranges. Throw all the fruit and vegetables at us that you want. Click the thumbs up button downstairs on this video. Tell your friends that we're doing this, because we put in a lot into each one of these, and it's nice to hear feedback, or just to, see those view numbers or listen numbers that people, film fans are finding this. So that is crucial to share it on the socials. If you want to talk films with me, you could do so on Twitter. I'm at OrzovDunn, or you could follow us at film_hooligans. Jason Eleanor Alt. I think I've used that one before, but there is, Eleanor is very, that means something this time. Where can everyone find you?
I'm at Jason E. Alt on the Twitters, which we'll have linked on this video, right? And
that's true.
Your ears work if you're listening to this in podcast form. Thanks for the download. Jason E. Alt on the Twitter, and if you go to my pin post, I have links to all the other projects I do around the internet.
All right. Well, until next time, here's looking at you, kid. I don't know. Something old Hollywood. What's a good old Hollywood thing to say?
I'm not a communist, and I have never been a communist. Please let me continue to work.